Welcome to Yield to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Hey guys, real quick, before we jump into the episode, I need you to do the 3 S's for me. What is that? First of all, I need you to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss an episode of our podcast. Number 2, I need you to share it with your family and friends. Don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone else. Lastly, I need you to say something. Leave us a comment. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you want to see from us, what you like, what you don't like. We are open to your suggestions. We want to know everything that you want to let us know about the podcast. All right. Now, get back to the episode. All right. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you listen, like, subscribe, and share our podcast on all of your podcast listening platforms. And also make sure you guys are checking us out on our YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. Again, that's the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network, where not only will you find the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, which you are currently watching or listening to, but you will also find the Girl Dad Discussions podcast as well, which is our sister podcast. So both of those podcasts can be found on the Deal to Heal with E. James. The Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube. So make sure you guys go and check that out. Also, our podcast is brought to us by our new our new platform, which is the Deal to Heal School for Living, which is our school community on the school platform, which just helps us to more so continue our mission to help people to deal, heal, fulfill by giving you resources and workshops to help us to work on our emotional health as well as our mental health. So make sure you guys go and check us out. The first 7 days is absolutely free. The links will be in the comments, or you could just scan the QR code in the upper left-hand corner or right-hand corner, depending on where you're watching this at. So again, that's the Deal to Heal School for Living. Make sure you guys go and check that out. That is our sponsor for our podcast on today. So today, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Miss. I'm going to make sure I say it right. Myreesha, is that right?
Myreesha, that's right. That's right.
Thank you. Okay, yep. Cool. I want to make sure I said it right. I don't like messing up people's names. No, and I should have asked before we start recording, but it's all good. So how are you? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm blessed to be here. I'm glad to be here. I'm so glad to be here.
No problem at all. Thank you for being here, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and I definitely appreciate it. And so we're going to jump right into this thing. Do me a favor, introduce yourself to my audience. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll jump into this thing and make it do what it do. So go ahead and tell us a little about yourself.
Okay. My name is Myreesha Franklin, and I am founder and CEO of For the Love of Self. What we do is we do programming, getting girls ready for career readiness, cosmetology, as well as emotional intelligence. We have programs that go into the schools, and we partner with other organizations to really prepare the next generation for readiness after they get out of school, as well as being able to make money now. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. And we're gonna jump into this thing because I found your story interesting because I believe that there are some overlaps or comparisons, should I say, with
Mhm.
some of the things that I grew up doing. And so let's just go from start from the beginning, right? So who was Myreesha as a young girl, and what were some of the things that you enjoyed coming up?
Yes.
And how did your story all start?
Okay, so I tell people all the time that I've been an entrepreneur from the womb. I mean, I was selling candy in school. I
Mhm.
literally only had maybe two jobs and I get bored after a month. I know that's not normal, but I'm like, get me out of here after a month. And my very first job, which I love to tell people, is it was a church down the street from me that we attended, and I was probably 10 at the time. And I went
Mhm.
down there and I asked them if I could get a job. And so I guess I don't know if they felt sorry for me or they didn't want to disappoint. So they let me come in for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, and they paid me $1 per hour. And that was my very first job. And I mean, even at 10, I knew they had me doing busy work. They would say, staple this, do that, but it was $1 per hour. So it's all good. Then I elevated to being the candy girl at school, like in the 6th grade. I had all the candy. People would come to my locker. That's when you could sell candy
Mhm.
at
Yeah.
school. So nowadays you can't do that. Telling my
Yep.
age, but that's okay.
Right.
So
Right.
I would sell candy at school, and eventually I moved on and I started to do my own hair. And people would ask me, "Hey, who braided your hair?" And I'd be like, "I did." I didn't think it was that good, but I don't know. So that continued to happen. And then I eventually started my braiding business in my mom's living room.
Mm.
And I have to go back. I always have to tell this story. I used to go to a church. Um, I went to a church as a youth called Sheffield, and back then in my city, it was a pastor, Dr. Westlake, and he had everybody stand up, and he said, "Everybody that's looking for a job, stand up." And then he said, "Everybody looking for a job, sit back down." I'm like, okay. Then he said, I want the people, he said, "I don't want you to look for a job. I want you to look for the job." And he said, "If you're looking for the job, stand up." And I stood up, and I was a teenager, but I tell you, literally, that's when my braiding business started. That's when people
Mhm.
started asking me to braid their hair. It would just be guys, be guys at school. Cause when I was in school, we didn't have dreadheads. Everybody wore braids.
Yeah.
Everybody was wearing braids. So I was the braider. And people would just start asking me to braid their hair, and eventually I had a business, a rotation, a schedule of people that would come to my mom's house and get their hair braided. I mean, from church, from school. And that's how I made my money. I had a friend, she used to think I was rich. I don't know why she thought I was rich. Not sure why she thought that. Part of it was because I was careless and I would leave money around laying on the floor. So in her mind, only somebody who's rich would do something like that,
Yeah.
right? So I started braiding hair. I continued to do that. And that was kind of my career for a while. Once I actually graduated high school, I went to cosmetology school. I got my license. I stopped braiding hair. And then I went into actual styling, color, chemicals. And so I just kind of geared toward women. And that was kind of around the same time that I had gotten married. So I kind of transitioned from, because I had tons of guy clients. That was all my clients were guys. I was braiding hair. Then I kind of transitioned to styling hair and doing chemicals and all that kind of stuff. So, um, yeah. So let's say fast forward from me getting my license to maybe, let's fast forward probably 15 years.
Yeah.
We'll say,
But well, before we go that part, because I want to just go back a little, right?
uh-huh.
Because like I said, I know I feel like some of your story kind of mirrors mine a little bit, or at least in kindred families, right?
Yeah.
Kindred spirits.
Yeah.
Definitely grew up in church. Grew up in church. Started selling candy at an early age, and so
Did
if you think
you?
about, yeah, yeah. So if you think about the and again showing our age, right? we
Right.
back in the days, when you would go to the grocery store, you would come out, it would be kids selling candy outside the grocery store,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
I did that for years, right?
Did you?
Um, they, of course, they don't let us do that now, or they stopped it some years ago. But
Yeah.
also another thing that I did growing up, still young, but if you think about, so I live in Chicago, right?
Uh-huh.
And so if you think about, and this, I think this in most major cities, but when you come off the expressway ramps and
Hmm.
and you get to that light, it will be people that will be selling stuff in the street, whether
Right.
it's socks or whatever. So
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
that as well for years.
Oh, so you was a
And we
hustler,
made,
huh?
yeah, and I was gonna say, like you, the kids that I went to school with thought we were rich too. They was like, I see y'all on the corner, y'all got all it, because this was back in the '90s. So this was when the Bulls
Yeah.
was at their height, so we were
Hmm.
sounding like Michael Jordan t-shirts, and
Oh yeah.
we had like a whole setup on the side of the street, right? And we did that for years. We did that for years. And so that was kind of my introduction to entrepreneurship as well. And
Okay.
you mentioned about starting going to cosmetology school, and I was just
Mhm.
sharing with you before we started recording of
Yeah.
how deep that is in my family, which was another
Yes.
reason why I wanted to have you on, because my grandmother was a licensed cosmetologist,
Wow.
my sister was, my cousin was, my ex-wife was,
Yeah.
so I know a lot of people that went to cosmet. Actually, my niece, I forgot my niece did as well. My niece went to
Okay.
cosmetology school as well. It's just a whole lot in our family as far as
Hmm.
cosmetologists and people involved with doing hair and even braiding and stuff. So I just really was drawn to your story just on that, on
Yeah.
that fact, because I'm like, oh, I definitely want to talk to you about that, and then we'll get even into the mission behind it when things kind of change.
Yeah.
But you were saying now that at this point, and definitely I understand too. Let me say this, and I appreciate you, because what you said was you had a lot of guy clients, and then you
Hmm.
got married, and so you
Yeah.
had to switch your clientele. And I
Yeah.
want to applaud you on that, because there are so many people who was just like, this how I make my money, and oh, you know what I mean? Like, but you gotta prioritize what's most important. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
you are married, and no man is going to have a whole lot of dudes coming to his house to get their hair braided. Whatever, it don't
Right.
matter what the business is,
Right.
especially with their new wife. It's like, no, I don't know you like that, player. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate you for even having that mindset to say, you know what, I'm not even gonna let this become a problem. Let me switch my focus on my clientele, and still make the money that you wanted to make. I'm sure it still
And
was
even more.
successful, and save yourself a lot of heartache in your marriage too. So
Yeah.
I just definitely want to say I appreciate you even having that mindset to do that.
And I can't even take credit for that, to be for real. I feel like, how you just transition in life, and I feel like it just tapered off, and I assume it was probably God doing it, but it just kind of tapered, and my interest changed, to be honest. What I realized is that braiding hair, I could make this amount per hour, but doing a sew-in, I could make $150 an hour. And so it was like, it was really just a shift in where I was. But that's kind of the thing. When you follow the Lord, your life just is not perfect, but it will
Mhm.
shift and it will flow accordingly. You know what I mean? So look, I don't
Mhm.
want to even take the credit for that, because I can't say I was thinking that. I just was thinking
Right.
I'm about to make some more money, but that
Right.
just
Right.
happened to be beneficial for
Mhm.
where I was.
Yeah, yeah. But like you said, God leads you. God leads you in the right direction when you're when
Mhm.
you're paying attention and you're listening. And so
Yes.
I'm glad that you are listening. At that point. But you were saying you started cosmetology school when you decided to make that shift.
So I probably was maybe 19, 20. I was young. I was probably
Mhm.
19, 20, somewhere in between there, when maybe 20, when I started cosmetology school. And
Mhm.
I remember thinking, like, I was deciding between being a psychologist and a cosmetologist. Big difference, but just the thing is, I feel like as cosmetology, we are lay. counselors anyway. You know, people get
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
chair. I know some business, okay? I'm not gonna
right.
ever share.
And I was finna say that I think that
Yeah.
because that is so common, when you go to get your hair done or even at a barber shop, that when
Hmm.
you sit in that chair, and you begin to conversate with the customer and everything, or the customer conversate with you, there are some conversations that's had, and you get to know each other and all of that. So
Mhm.
I think maybe that it should even be, even if it's just a small part of the
Yeah,
training, should be
yeah,
some kind of mental health thing,
yeah,
whatever, because people do begin to know you and trust you and value your opinion,
yeah,
on some of the things in their life. And so yeah,
yeah,
that is, it sounds like it will be totally different, but those who know, what I'm
yeah.
saying. Once you get in that chair, it's like, hey, why are you doing today? Well, I had to kick the dog, and what I'm saying.
Yes, exactly, exactly, exactly.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you're making that decision between the two.
Yeah, so I was deciding between the two. I decided to go to cosmetology school, which was a good choice. I like I said, I had a career doing that for a while, and now I'm actually in school for my master's in social work. So it's full circle. We're coming
That's
back around, and the goal with that is still to do therapy and different things like that. And it goes along with the nonprofit as well, just social work and advocacy, just all of the things, and then therapy as well. So it's like nothing is wasted, nothing in our life is wasted. It's just everything will come back around full circle. And I know sometimes we feel like we are left behind, and some people would feel for whatever reason in their life, but it's like just know that nothing in your life is wasted. And it's like once I did decide that, it was a good career. Like cosmetology is very lucrative, like even yeah, it's very lucrative. So I I felt like that was the route to go for that time.
hmm And I like what you said too, because I've said that very same thing, and that's why I kind of nodded my head when you said it. As far as nothing gets wasted,
Man.
because I've learned in my journey, and even as I talk to people about finding their purpose and things of that nature, I always tell them that purpose leaves clues, and you don't always recognize the clues when you're walking through it, right?
Yeah.
But when you do find your purpose, if you take the time and look back, you'll see little things along the way that was like, oh yeah, I remember that, and I remember this happened. You know what I mean? And it leads you to where you're going. And even your hardships and your failures and
Yeah.
all of that, none of that gets wasted. It all is all in the mix, right? When
Yeah.
God is whipping up this cake that He's
Yes.
building out of your life, He's like, yeah, we throwing all that in there, So you got to
Mhm.
throw the sugar in there to make it sweet, but you got to throw that flour in there too.
Yeah.
What I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
This is all to make it all work together, and none of it
Mhm.
gets wasted, like you said. And I think that's great. And so now you mentioned about the nonprofit, or let me not push
No,
you for
that's
it just
good.
yet,
Yeah.
if that's
Yeah.
where you want to go. But I would definitely want to get into that, again, because our stories kind of match. And so I actually just restarted another nonprofit. So
Mhm.
going back in my story, I'm not going to go way deep because of course my listeners have heard it before, but I lost my mother-in-law and I lost my mom, a couple years apart, both to cancer.
Mhm.
And I went through bereavement support at
Mhm.
that time. And one of the things that I noticed, that it wasn't a lot of African American families that came
Mhm.
through the bereavement support group while I was there. And
Yeah.
so I stayed there for a year. I was a volunteer. I volunteered there for a year. And after
Wow.
that year, I left and I started a nonprofit called Ann Christine Charities. Ann, which was my mom's name, Christine, which
Mhm.
was my mother-in-law at the time. And
Wow.
so I started that nonprofit um, to bring bereavement support to our communities,
That's awesome.
because I
Yeah.
was a minister at the time. And
Yeah.
so I knew that we were having funerals all the time. You know what I mean? So I'm
Oh,
like, I
yeah.
know we're dying, but we're not
Yeah.
taking advantage of this resource of bereavement support to help us to deal with our grief. And so I started that, and I did it for a couple of years. But now I just recently started the Deal to Heal the Rail Foundation, well, the Deal to Heal the Rail Incorporated
Okay.
nonprofit, as a part
Mhm.
of what I do now. in my mission to help to heal. And so, very, love that nonprofit space, and just I guess it's just in me, just growing up in church, to
Yeah.
have that heart to serve. And so, but now you have kind of switched gears again,
Yeah.
like you said, in some ways, but it kind of stems from your days as a cosmetologist. And so, tell us about that idea and that transition.
So let's um, fast forward about 15 years. Got my cosmetology license, and I'm feeling this urge to step from behind the chair. I always knew that I was not a lifer behind the chair. I knew I would be in the beauty and cosmetology space, but I knew being behind the chair for life was not my thing. That was
Mhm.
never the goal for me. I actually stayed probably longer than I ain't gonna say should have, but should have or wanted to, whatever.
Yeah.
Long story short, maybe about a few years prior, I had just had this burning desire. Like I knew I wanted to step from behind a chair, but that was my only job because clearly I told y'all earlier, not that I don't like working, I don't like working at a job. So I didn't have a lot of experience. So at the time, my husband, I had talked to him, and um, I'm not married, but at the time I was married. And so
Mhm.
I was talking to my husband at the time, and I was just like, hey, I have this idea, you know what I mean? And he's like, okay, so we kind of mapped out a plan. And, we were like, okay, cool. We had a plan for a decent amount of time. And I tell you, I went to this I went to this conference, and then I came back, and maybe a month or not too long after the conference, I felt the Holy Spirit tell me like it's time to leave like next month. I'm like, what? This can't
Mhm.
be possible. This can't be real, because like my husband, that wasn't his, like I was the that wasn't his flow. Like we had a plan, we gonna stick to the plan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm like, but I know this don't make sense, but I really sense that this is what I'm supposed to do. So we got on he got on board, he was supportive. I stepped out from behind the chair. I had this idea to do a beauty school online for curly hair kids that didn't know how to, or curly parents of curly hair children that didn't know how to do their hair. So it would be kind of like a virtual school where I would teach them. Now I had this big grand opening. I mean, didn't nobody come, but I had this big, had a big, I ain't gonna say nobody. It was a
Mhm.
faithful few. It was a faithful few. But I say that to say that I put it all out. I put it out there. And a guy called me, a friend, and he works in the schools. His name is Anthony Butler. And he said, you know what, Myreesha, I really think you should package this up to the schools. And I'm like, you know what? You might be right. So I kind of shifted what I was doing a little bit. I changed it a little bit, and I presented it to the schools, and it kind of just went like that I stepped from behind the chair. October was my first month out in 2021, and then by that summer of 2022 I was working in the schools. At I was working in like maybe 5 different middle schools. So it was a great opportunity. It was a great shift. And that's just what I've been doing since then, refining and kind of honing in onto the mission. And so it was kind of like when I first started, um, I was just doing business. It was more of a hodgepodge. I wasn't too focused on one thing. I was just trying to do everything. But it was still a great program, and we were in the schools. And so once we were in those schools, they had ESSER funds, which is COVID money. Ran out of that, so then I had to figure, okay, what are we gonna do, and just kind of go back to the drawing board. And that's when I became, and I became a 501c3 because initially I was just operating out of my LLC from when I was doing hair
Mhm.
because it was already established. I didn't necessarily need a nonprofit at the time, but we were doing the same work. And then I realized quickly after the ESSER funds ran out, like, oh, we're gonna need some people to donate. I probably need to
Right.
become a 501c3. So that transition happened. And, we just been hitting the ground running ever since then. I think the biggest transition for me was to go from an entrepreneur mindset to
Mhm.
a mission mindset.
Mhm.
And the difference is because I remember one time I felt God tell me, like, you're going to have to focus either on the business or the mission. Like you have a dual focus. And so not to you have to do both, right? But I think what he was saying to me is trust me that I'm going to provide for you. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Because as an entrepreneur, I'm thinking about that money. I
Right.
and as a business owner, and when you come to hair, you don't really think about a mission. I mean, my mission is to do good hair so that people can pay me
Right.
and make me happy. But moving into this, it was an actual mission. It was a mission behind what I was doing. The goal is to really um, connect with the students to impart into the next generation through the avenue of cosmetology and entrepreneurship. But if I'm so focused on getting paid, I'm missing out on opportunities to impact the people that
Mhm.
I was called to serve. So I had to kind of make a decision, like mission or business, mission or money. You know what I mean? What are you going to focus on? And so in that, it also kind of helped me really figure out what the mission was, because
Mhm.
when I first became a nonprofit, I was just like, oh, you have a grant? Okay, I can fit into that. Oh, I can fit into that. You know what I mean? And not lying about anything, but just trying to make the program fit to whatever they were asking so that I could receive the funds, which I never did,
Mhm.
just for the record. It didn't work. It didn't work. So, it has been an awesome learning curve to become a founder. And I know a lot of times, even in the entrepreneur space, you will hear people say, like, becoming successful is not about the prize, it's not about
Mhm.
getting to the end result. It's really about you becoming. You can
Yeah.
only achieve what you become, right? And that's been my journey, even in this field as a founder and a CEO. Like, I can only be as great. The organization can only be as great as I am healed, as I am, educated, skilled, whatever the
Mhm.
case is. It can only go as far as my capacity because I'm
Right.
the one leading it, right? And so that's really been the journey. It's like what that's really been the journey. What we're doing is affecting other people, but we have to remember whatever our purpose is, whatever we're being called to, is always about shaping us, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I love it. I love a lot of what you said. One of the things I want to go back to was you were saying when you even did your first event, it's like, well, nobody showed up. One of the things that I teach people and I talk to people, because I'm in the entrepreneur space as well and the
Hmm.
speaker space. I'm in a whole lot of different spaces. Anyway, so I'm talking to people all the time. And one of the things that I tell people is you got to get to the point as you being when you are the founder and when you are the person
Hmm.
that is putting on the event, you have to be able to detach yourself from the operations of the event and the outcome
Hmm.
of the event,
Yeah.
right? Especially when you're just getting started, And what that means is if nobody shows up, you still have to do it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? If
Yeah.
if you put out the register, I just did an event last weekend, um, and didn't get the turnout that I wanted.
Yeah.
But even some of the other events that I do, because that was an in-person event, and I also do online events,
Okay.
virtual events. And so,
Hmm.
but still, in both cases, you have times where people may even buy tickets and still don't
Right.
show up, or
Yeah.
people don't buy the tickets and don't
Yeah.
show up. You
Yeah.
know, but you got to show up
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah.
And so with you having that mindset, like you said, that all right, you put your all into it. I'm like, you already on the right track, just there, because it's going to be that time, and it's going to be that testing season that,
Hmm.
like you said, when you start to focus on what is the mission, and
Yeah.
sometimes the mission this requires you to go first. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? It requires you to say, you know what, I got to step out here on faith and I got
Yeah.
to make it happen, regardless of what the money looks like. We got to
Mhm.
push forward with the mission. And then once you do that, then it even verifies, your mission itself. Because when you're trying to teach others, like, all right, this is what you need to do, you need to be focused or whatever. And then they like, if they watching you and you're like, well, you just had an event last weekend that you canceled because then nobody, like, no, you got sometime it's gonna be that way, and you got to keep pressing forward with the mission when the mission is the goal. And I
Yep.
think that once you learn your purpose and once you
Yeah.
collect with your mission, what your mission really is, that the money will come, whether
Yeah.
it's through grants, whether it's through donations or
Yeah.
whatever. The
Hmm.
money will come, but the mission got to be solid first,
Yep.
in order for the money to even be attracted to what you're doing.
Exactly. And that's what I learned. It's just like, because a lot of what I teach the girls is also identity, because our identity is shaped in so many things. So for me, my identity was shaped in rejection, right? And so I was afraid to go after the money and ask for it. I was afraid to have the events. I was afraid to do the things because my identity was wrapped in, if I'm rejected, that means that I am not enough, right?
Mhm.
And so that's not true, but
Right, right.
that's not true. But the thing is how we identify shapes the decisions that we make, right? We have to like sit with ourselves and really recognize how we are seeing ourselves and how we are making the decisions that we're making and why we're making them. Even when we do have some success, there's still some mind blocks that we have that keep us from really moving forward. And so I talk to the girls about identity. And for me, identity is for me personally, identity is deeply rooted in being a daughter of God, and knowing that each step I take, if I take it, this is the thing. If you have a good relationship with a parent, most parents, or if you are a parent, most of the time, if you're taking your child along with you, you're going to take them to something good. They may not always know. They may not
Mhm.
always know what you're doing. However, if you're holding their hand, there is a level of trust where it's just they might look up and be like, Daddy, where are we going? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But at the same time, they're taking steps with you and they're moving ahead. And they know that you're leading them to safety. If you are a good parent, they know that you're leading them to safety. They don't have
Mhm.
a clue about where they're going, but there is no doubt in their mind that there's going to be safety in where they're going. And so the identity piece for me starts with being a daughter of God, knowing that if I'm taking a step with my father, there's safety. It's a safety net.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? No matter what it looks like, because the thing is, we want things to look glitz and glam. But like I said before, the whole purpose is for the making. He's
Yeah.
not doing this just so that we can receive the prize. He's doing this so that we can eventually begin to look more like him, right?
Right.
And so that may look like some failure. That may look like a divorce. That may look like a loss in some kind of capacity. But in our eyes, in this realm of the world, we see that as a loss, like bad. In actuality, it's an invitation for us to get to know God even better. And I say all of that to say that when your identity is wrapped up in what you don't have or what you will do or what you can't do or what you will provide, you can easily be deterred from the mission when it doesn't work out all the way at first.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that, and I want to talk about something really quickly though, because even in that transition of becoming, there's some work that you have to do, right,
Absolutely.
personally, and you have to go through some changes, right.
Yeah.
So even with everything that I do now, all the things that I'm involved with now, a couple of years ago when I was starting, started the podcast and started, all the things that I do now, there was a transition that I was going through at that time, which included me being exposed to self development,
Yeah.
and then really getting into that space and learning more about myself and learning
Yeah.
about what's important to me and how I show up in spaces and all of
Yeah.
those things, and really doing that self work. And so, even as you were speaking, I was kind of connecting with some of the things that you were saying because you was mentioning about being, seeing God as the Father, and walking along with Him,
Hmm.
and that helping to shape your identity as well, because you know that He's leading you to a safe space. And those who know my story definitely know, my story, everything that I'm doing now kind of started with the fatherless daughter space, right? I ended up going through a divorce, and realizing that every woman I've ever talked to was a fatherless daughter. And so I
Wow.
started doing work in that area to help fatherless daughters, in which,
Yeah.
fast forward now, we're here, right?
Hmm.
um, but so I said, when you were saying about being, seeing God as the Father, and connecting with Him that way, it resonated with
Hmm.
me on both levels, spiritually and naturally. We're
Yeah.
not having that natural father, but also having a heavenly father as well. Even if you don't have a natural father, that heavenly father still to love you and guide you and lead you in the way that He will have you to go. And
Hmm.
when we are open to that voice and open to receiving that guidance from Him, He'll always lead us, in the way that He will have us to go. And as long as we're not fighting against Him,
Yeah.
it all work out for us in the end. So
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
having that goal, and taking that time to self-reflect and really work on yourself,
Yeah.
is a key component. So how how much of your journey, in that transition, was doing that self-work as well, and what were kind of the process, should I say, that you kind of had to go through to say, what, let me change some things about myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I recently been working with the coach, Kyle King. I'll shout him out. And one thing that I noticed in working with him, he first of all, he always says what he helped me realize was that um, because we would talk about systems, we would talk about
Mhm.
putting things in place. And part of me being a creative, I'm super flexible. So I'm like, okay, well, we can do it like this. And then oh, well, let's create this. And he's just like, you have a great program. You don't, it's almost as if I'm just like, anybody that will take me, anybody that, like, will you take me? Will you take me? Will you, it's just like, and so is he helped me understand that even though it was through a systems process, it's like, no, you have your system in place and this is what it is, and you're offering it to whoever wants it and will receive it. And if they don't receive it, that's okay because it wasn't for them. But
Mhm.
that was huge for me as an individual. I don't even think he really, I don't think he knows that because I didn't tell him that. But it was an eye opener for me because what I realized is a part of me was like that. A part of
Mhm.
me wanted to present in certain ways to be accepted, to be received. You know what I mean? Like, and I wasn't I guess you would say I wasn't a chameleon. I wasn't like fake. I'm not
Mhm.
going to be around you and act one way and then get around the next. Everybody that knows me would have the same description of who I am, but there was still this part of me that felt like I wasn't enough. And so that part of me that felt like I wasn't enough made me feel like I had to kind of succumb to who I was with or where I was to be appealing or to be appealing. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? To be received, to be accepted. So, and when he said, I'm like, oh my gosh, I do that in real life.
Yeah.
This is not just about the organization. And so it was also a level of confidence that was lacking, if I could be
Mhm.
completely honest. It was a level of confidence that was lacking. And so once once I took that in and I began to think about it, and I also took that to God, it's something that happened in me that I was able to exude in my organization. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I was the driver of that car and it was only going where I was having it to go. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I want to say I really appreciate you being on, and sharing your story and the work that you do. And I know that you're making a difference. I want you to have the last word, right? And I want you to leave us with a word of advice, information, not information, advice, inspiration, however you feel,
Yeah.
right? And also with your social media handles and things of that nature, so that we can see where to find you and where to follow you at. And in the meantime, while you think about that, to my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Make sure you guys are following us on our website at the dealhealfulfill.org. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org. Make sure you guys are following us there. Also, make sure you guys check out my personal website, which is the Ernest James speakslife.com. Again, Ernest James speakslife.com. And that is for if you want me to come out to be a speaker or to facilitate a workshop at your organization or your school. Make sure that you guys follow me there or contact me there at that website, ernestjamesspeakslife.com. And again, make sure that you're checking us out on our website, the dealhealfulfill.org. Also, our ebooks, ebooks by ejames.com is where you can find our ebooks. I think it's still up. I'm actually taking that away. So probably by the time you guys watch this episode, that website will not even be up anymore. However, you still can get the ebooks for free by joining our school community, which we talked about earlier. You can scan the QR code in the corner, and that'll take you there. The first 7 days of being in the program is absolutely free. So once you go in there, you'll be able to go to the resources section and download the ebooks from there. So again, make sure you guys go check out our ebooks. What else? Deal to Heal teas. This is still up, but we are making some changes, so we may, go away with these as well. So make sure you guys get your inspirational t-shirts while you can at our website, deal the number two healtees.com, deal to healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. Make sure you guys go there to check out our inspirational tees, which include our podcast merch as well, which is our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. There's one for the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, as well as one for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. So make sure you guys go there and check that out. Last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops bi-monthly talking about forgiveness, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, even forgiveness of the world. And so whenever you're watching this episode, there's either a workshop just ended or there's one coming up. So you guys can go to forgivenessmission.com in order to sign up for our next free virtual workshop, or go to Eventbrite and look up Forgiveness Workshop sponsored by the Forgiveness Mission. That workshops are absolutely free, but the information is priceless. So make sure you guys go there in order to check that out. Also, as I mentioned earlier, we actually started our Deal to Heal the World Incorporated, which is our new nonprofit, and we are definitely taking donations so that we can begin to do more of the work that we love to do in our community, helping our community. So you guys can look in the description below. You'll see the link where you can go and give and make a donation to the Deal to Heal the World Incorporated nonprofit. So we're very excited about that. We're looking forward to being able to, do the work that we need to do and that we want to do in the community as free of charge to the community. There are things that we do now that we charge for, but we definitely want to be able to, with your help and your donations, to be able to bring things to the community that is absolutely free for them to take part in. So you can make your donation to the Deal to Heal the World Incorporated just by clicking the link in the descriptions. Make sure you guys go there. All right. So thank you again so very much for being here. I definitely enjoyed talking to you and definitely enjoyed your story. And I love how, the different parts I can relate to even my own story. So that's been amazing. But I want you to have the last word. So the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a pleasure. I enjoyed myself as well. And again, to your listeners, I just want to give you guys an opportunity to learn more about what I do. You can follow me at Floss, FLOS, which is For the Love of Self. It's an acronym. So Floss Students on Instagram. That's our Instagram handle. And you can see some of the work that we've done and what we're doing to impact the girls. Also, our website is Floss, FLOSKC, because I'm from Kansas City, flosskc.org. From there, you can connect if you would like to connect a daughter of yours, a friend. If you would like to donate and give to the cause because you see the impact and the movement that we're making, I would just encourage you also, if you just have an encouraging word or a resource, you could email us and just share that with us. All types of partnerships are welcome. And I just want to leave you with this: put God first. No matter what you do, put God first. And that's it.
All right, all right. And we can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.